We're moving on now to the trainee research presentations. And every year, it's really wonderful. We get to invite trainees from across the province to come and talk about the work that they're doing. And this year, they're going to be talking about the work that they're doing related to mental health. So some people will be doing presentations, some people will be doing posters. And the posters you'll be able to see in our lovely pink cube, which is up here. And so during the breaks and at lunch, certainly go around and take a look at them and have a chance to speak to some of the trainees. Now, this is a kind of an interesting time because the trainees have 2 minutes to talk about their work and to get their message across and its importance. And we have 7 students who are going to be speaking today. The way we've organized it, we'll have the first 3. They'll come up and each do their 2-minute presentation to give you a taste of their work. And then we'll ask them to come over here, and you'll have a chance to ask questions. So get your questions ready, ask the questions, and then we'll move to the second group, and we'll do the same thing. And of course, you'll have a chance to ask your more detailed questions when you meet them at the breaks and over lunch. So to start, I would like to ask our first presenter to come forward, who's Jacqueline Hogue from York University. Jacqueline?
Good morning. Young women are routinely bombarded by body image ideals through mass media. With the enormous popularity of social media, they also see idealized images of their own peers. What happens to young women's self-esteem and body image when they engage with peers on social media? In my study, half of the female undergraduate students identified a female acquaintance within their own age range whom they considered more attractive than themselves. They then browsed her Facebook profile for a period of 5 minutes, during which they left a comment on a photo of her. They then went to Instagram and did the same thing. The other half of participants did a similar activity, but engaged with the Facebook and Instagram profiles of a female family member whom they did not consider more attractive than themselves, and who was considerably younger or older than them. All participants then completed measures of body image and self-esteem. Compared to the young women who interacted with family members, the women who interacted with peers had higher state body dissatisfaction, less positive feelings about body parts that are alterable through control of food intake and exercise, less positive feelings about body parts that are associated with strength, stamina, and agility, as well as lower momentary self-esteem regarding both their performance and appearance. This shows that appearance-based social media engagement with peers is causally related to risk factors, that is, body dissatisfaction and low self-esteem, for disordered eating in young women. This study's results could inform prevention initiatives to protect young women from the adverse effects of certain social media activity on body image and self-esteem. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jacqueline. Next, we have Anne-Marie Corrado from the University of Western Ontario.
So, according to the Canadian Caregiver Coalition, it is not if, it is when you will become a caregiver. So if you look around, the issue of palliative caregiving affects each and every one of us in this room, because at some point in our life, we might care for somebody who is near death, and towards the end of our life, we may be fortunate enough to receive care. So by 2034, it has been estimated that the number of seniors is going to double. And what that means is that the need for palliative care is going to amplify. Now, it's no surprise that women provide the majority of palliative care. And for every 7 hours of care that they're providing, only 2 hours of professional care is being provided to the patient. So as women are, managing multiple roles, such as caring for children and also working, it's no surprise that they experience negative feelings such as stress, anxiety, and depression. And women have said that respite services, which are intended to give them a short period of a break to do other activities besides caregiving, are insufficient and inadequate in Ontario. So in 2012, the Southwest CCAC in London, Ontario, developed a new model of palliative-based care in the home. And essentially, to give you a brief overview, it connects a remote nurse practitioner to personal support workers who go in the home, and they're connected through technology. And this gives caregivers an 8-hour break for respite. So the purpose of my study is to do a secondary data analysis on 13 semi-structured interviews that were done with female family caregivers to see what their experience with the E-Shift model is like. And I'm going to be doing an inductive content analysis to identify themes. So the findings of this study are really critical because they're hopefully going to support female family caregivers in their role as they care for a loved one and potentially support the implementation of E-Shift across Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. And the last presentation in this group is from Erica Port from Lakehead University. Erica.
Good morning. So just to start with some background information. So public stigma refers to the negative attitudes that are held by the public, while self-stigma refers to the internalization of public stigma. So in other words, if someone applies publicly held negative attitudes towards their self, then that would demonstrate self-stigma. Some research by Lannon, Vogel, Brenner, and Tucker in 2015 showed that public stigma of help-seeking and mental illness were related to both types of self-stigma. So self-stigma related to mental illness and self-stigma related to help-seeking. Also, the extent that one agrees with stigmatizing attitudes, which is referred to as endorsed stigma, might also contribute to self-stigma. So as self-stigma, it has been associated with several negative outcomes. This study sought to gain a better understanding of the factors that predict self-stigma. So participants for this study included 380 females and 96 males from a Canadian university. An online study was completed that consisted of the measures that are listed on the slide. So first, t-tests were conducted to examine sex differences among the stigma variables. Sex differences were only found for endorsed stigma scores, with higher endorsed stigma being found among males on average. Among a sample of only the female participants, Pearson correlations and multiple linear regressions were conducted. The first multiple regression showed that both types of public stigma that are listed on the slide, as well as endorsed stigma, helped to predict self-stigma of mental illness, and this model accounted for 14% of the variance. The second multiple regression it consisted of the same predictors, and this regression showed that these predictors also predicted self-stigma of help-seeking, and that model accounted for 21% of the variance in help-seeking stigma. So to conclude, this study showed that public and endorsed stigma helped predict self-stigma among women in university. Thus, the extent that one perceives there to be negatively held attitudes within the public and the extent that one holds stigmatizing attitudes predicts whether or not one would apply those attitudes towards their self if they had a mental health difficulty or sought help for a mental health difficulty. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And now can I have our presenters come and take their place there while you get your questions ready. Very interesting to hear the presentations going from the younger women to the older women and issues that are different and in some cases the same that people experience. So questions. We have our microphones ready. Okay, we're down here.
If no one else does, I have a question. My question is actually directed at the issue of eating disorders.
Well, you have to use your mic, Robin. I'm sorry, your voice is not quite loud enough.
It's my cold. My question is actually directed to the future implications of your study on eating disorders, where you talked about how it might inform interventions, and I wanted to know how you thought it might do so.
Right. So I think a lot more research needs to be done, but some ideas for future research would include, for example, qualitative studies regarding what people, what young women say that they do engage in for self-presentation strategies when they're deciding which, selfies or groupies they're posting on Facebook and Instagram, and using and amalgamating that information with figuring out how and why, when you interact with family members as a young woman, as compared to acquaintances, why your self-esteem and body image isn't as affected as when you're engaging with acquaintances, and amalgamating that information to design prevention programs. Could be psychoeducation, and then having one group do a psychoed intervention compared to one without, and see if their body image is not as effective.
Good. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Someone asked me this question a couple of days ago, and I thought it was really great. What surprised you so far about the research that you've done?
So I think we can open that up for who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay.
So for my research, I've actually not analyzed my data yet, but just something that sort of surprised me so far is I was always of the mindset that if we go and provide women with services, it's automatically going to solve the problem. So if we just go and give them these respite services, everything's going to be okay. But through my literature search so far, and the reason I'm looking at their experiences is because I've realized that there's so many factors that come into play. So not only is giving them a service important, it's important to listen to them and what they want. So women are saying, we also want to make sure that the person who's taking care of our loved one is competent and that we can trust them. So that's important to consider, because you don't just want to give a service and assume that it's going to solve any mental health issues, because it could actually make them potentially worse.
And Erica, do you want to comment on that as well?
Oh, yeah, sure. So something just came to mind from the study that I just completed for this talk, was that sex differences were only found for endorsed stigma. So we didn't find sex differences for other types of stigma. So for example, the public stigma. So it wasn't a surprise that there were some sex differences, since other literature has shown that. But anyways, it was a little bit surprising that we only found sex differences within that one type of stigma. But again, further analyses need to be done with this data to really understand what the relationships are like there, and to see how that relates to other literature as well.
Good. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.